In addressing the problem of homophobia, I think it's very important that we realize that it's not up to a student to come to us and say, hey, this happened to me. It's really up to us as educators to create a safe place for all students. In so many ways, we're only treating the symptoms of homophobia. And what I mean by that is we're being reactive rather than proactive. Rather than just addressing individual incidents of homophobia, thinking that that's going to create a safe place for all students. Those things are important. Yes, we should do that. But I think more so we should get together as a campus faculty, as a school community, and we have to come together and talk about how are we going to address this from a holistic view, not just individual incidents. I think it's important for us to think about how language impacts our classroom community. When we speak words, we give them power. And by allowing the phrases and the slurs to happen in our classroom, whether or not we believe that they're homophobic, they're still derogatory in nature. So we have to address them. Although a student may say that's so gay and is actually saying something that means that's stupid or you're stupid, it's still a derogatory slur, and it can still have an impact on a student who is in the classroom who identifies as GLBTQ. And so we have to think about that, and we have to think about that kind of idea of how we address language in our classrooms. When I was teaching high school English, I had a student call another student the F word. I immediately stopped class, and not out of shame and not out of disrespect, I asked the student to go to the OED, and he pulled the word, he read the definition out, where the word came from, and as a community we had this kind of understanding in class discussion. The student even said after he read the etymology, he was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for it to mean that. I meant to say, this. And it wasn't in a derogatory way. But after reading the etymology and after having that kind of classroom discussion, they walked away that day knowing that language has power. And when you speak it, you give it power. And that it doesn't matter what kind of pop cultural meaning is in existence now, that some words just should not be spoken. And I think that's pretty important. We have to teach our kids the power of language and what happens when we say that language, and what do we actually mean by using that language, and how that may impact another student or a different life. We need to have those critical conversations with our students.
The first things I would do is ask the teacher where they were in their own personal lives. Wanting to be with it, wanting to tackle difficult content, whatever, I would first ask them to examine their own beliefs. I would ask them to examine their openness and their willingness and their ability to keep personal bias out of the discussion. And once we kind of had a conversation about that, I think the next thing would be to understand their content area. What's the entry point in their content? Is it health? Is it women's history? Is it psychology, sociology? Are you a math teacher? Where is it in your curriculum or your content area that I can best support you? Once I understood that, I would then look at opportunities to augment or supplement their own curriculum by providing resources or searching for resources. If it's not a content area that lends itself to those kinds of discussions, let's say it's a math or a science area that might not readily lend itself to those discussions, I would certainly make them aware of National Day of Silence. At minimum, be a participant in your classroom and spend time examining that issue. They're available, or there are resources available online, YouTube clips, all kinds of quick visual media that can certainly provoke some conversations in the classroom outside of a content area where it might be more natural to spend some time examining sexual orientation. There's a kind of a repertoire of phrases that are very natural for kids to use. Cool is something that was that's cool, that's really cool, that's awesome. Things that we say without thinking, that's my generation. I believe what I hear most frequently is, but that's so gay. Deconstructing, unpacking that's so gay, students understand that gay has a connotation to it, and I truly believe that when most students use it, they're not using it what they believe is in a pejorative way. It's just a phrase they've adopted. Having a sense that the word can be harmful or hateful toward a group of people is a connection that I think has to consciously be made. So bringing that into the students' awareness is the first step, but then actually having them be responsible for their language is important. And with the immediacy of language, with the immediacy of texting, of tweeting, of speaking, I think we are more likely to value our, the thinking that goes into communicating well. I think we value that less because we value speed and immediacy. Just because the environment is there, just because you get the page, just because you get the message doesn't mean you need to respond to it immediately. And having students participate in the here and the now, and kind of being aware of the potential for what they have to do in the here and now, and understanding that they don't have to respond to everything else that's out there. I hope gives them a chance to kind of pause and bracket and say, what is it that I'm really saying? And I think we're losing that. I think we're losing that in our social media environments because we're participating on so many levels so rapidly that I think we're less inclined to really think about what it is that we're actually saying or the consequence of what we're saying.
How do we fix the situation? How do we improve it? I think it goes back to awareness. I think making folks aware of the situations that are out there and informing administrations and teachers and administrators and principals and vice presidents and all across the board. This is how you can respond to these kinds of situations. This is what an appropriate response would be. And these situations do happen. They do happen in your school and on your campus on a regular basis.
I think there's also one piece, and Brian McNaught, in one of the lectures that he had in Growing Up Gay in America, had talked about this, and I thought that was the first time I had dawned on me. If you are a girl that is being harassed, and having gender issues, you can kind of go home and your mom says, yeah, I know, that kind of happens, and here's what we have to do. And there's a relationship that it happens in this place, but I can go home. If you're a minority, you can feel the harassment and you go home and there's somebody saying, yeah, but we're really okay, we're a family. And because this is so pervasive, many of the homes for LGBTQ issues, there isn't a place that they can go to that says, yeah, but you're okay, you're just
right.
Like one of us. Because we haven't, it's starting, fortunately, on some campuses, but not in grade schools. Maybe some high schools have some support groups. But a little kid who is questioning and not knowing and gets name called, the last thing they want to go home is tell their father what they've been called. They're not going to, because they're sure they're going to get a double whammy. Mm-hmm. And so I think that makes some of these issues much more insidious than the other isms. Because where is their support group?
One of the best things a teacher, an instructor, a professor can do is to maintain that level of sort of professional conduct in the classes and what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate, and not waver from that. That's very important, is to be consistent. But I think it's also that one of the best things they can let students know is that they are listening. And if a teacher hears just off, just out of the corner, just at the corner of the room, hear somebody say, "That's so gay," or hear them say, make some kind of slur against the LGBT community, that a teacher, even if they don't particularly feel that they are an advocate of gay rights, can still demand a level of respect in their classroom. And to let a student know that just because it was to their neighbor, if the teacher hears that, then they can intervene in a way, again, not to shame the student necessarily, but to invite them to make a better choice. And if you need to make this comment, if you're going to have a gay, if you feel the need to engage in a gay slur, I don't know that there's a better choice. I think that would be more of a question of leaving that at the door and say, this is not something that comes into my classroom.
Elementary kindness, you know. Elementary kindness. Can we, you know, despite our differences of belief, can we not show one another elementary kindness? Is that too hard to